Think I was ignorance or something?
It's good to see you, man.
Yeah, back from Memphis.
Oh, man. Nice.
Oh, counterfeiting.
Let me just clean up a couple things here. Nothing to see here. Just, have a seat. I'll clean this up. How about a beer?
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, long journey.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy.
Yeah, and welcome back to Tacoma.
Oh, yeah. Gee,
Yeah.
what a freaking journey that was.
Really?
Oh, okay, so you're going to want to like, share, and subscribe, of course,
Yes.
and hang out for the music at the end. But
Yeah, because we write our own music, so
Yeah.
there's going to be a fresh new song at
oh
the
yeah,
end.
and it'll probably be all epic about this journey.
Yeah.
But
Nice.
yeah, so I was gonna drive from Memphis to Tacoma in like 3 days. I was just gonna beeline and go through Middle America and then up north and cut through Montana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, things didn't work out quite the way I intended.
Mm-hmm.
So, the first leg of the trip was okay. I'm driving through Arkansas and I was going to stay the night in Kansas City, so that was okay. It was a little windy here and there, but not too bad. And then, the second day I went and drove all the way up to South Dakota, and it was pretty much the same thing, just a lot of wind. Out in the middle of nowhere, really.
Oh, yeah. I've
know.
experienced the same thing going through, like, Texas with the dust storms and
Yeah, and
barren, desolate, like nothing.
it's a little hair raising, and you're tense, holding the steering wheel, doing the whole 3-point thing with one knee up, and
Yeah.
I'm like driving a stick shift for the first time in like 4 or 5 years, and
Oh, God.
so
Well, at least on the freeway, fifth gear all the way.
Yeah,
or
pretty much,
sixth,
yeah.
depending.
because that's the other thing, like 4 days before my trip, my car broke down, and I was like, well, guess I got to buy a new car. So
Jesus.
it was just like bad thing after bad thing was happening.
Ugh.
Anyway, like where it really went sideways though, I get into Montana, right? And I'm thinking, okay, 13-hour drive, I'll just cross the entire state of Montana from east to west. I get about halfway through it, right? And this is like early November. I'm thinking, it's not even winter yet.
Yeah.
Well, it is there, apparently.
Oh.
All ice and still all that crazy wind. So you've got crazy wind and no traction.
Oh, my God.
And I'm going like, the speed limits are like 80, but I'm doing like 50 or 60. And all these semi-trucks get pissed off and get in the left lane and go past me, and they break the wind. So all of a sudden your car just goes like
my God.
all over the place. And I'm like, this is nuts. And it gets dark really early, and I was like, no way am I driving in this in the dark.
No.
I-90, the whole thing was just a sheet of ice. And I was like, who the hell thought, oh, here's a glacier. This is a great place to put a state. Like...
That's a soundbite, I think, for the beginning. That's a good one.
Yeah, I was not a fan of Montana at all. But anyway, so that extended my trip by quite a bit. So I ended up in this small town called Big Timber.
I think I've been there, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it sounds very familiar.
Yeah, it was a nice enough place. The locals were pretty cool. I was like, hey, how much further on I-90 is it going to be like this? And they're like, where are you headed? I was like, Washington. And they're like, oh, you're fucked.
Ah!
And I was like, oh, okay, well,
Oh.
well, maybe I can just go south to Idaho. And they're like, well, that's pretty fucked too, but maybe that's a better idea.
Oh man, yeah. There's snow in the Snoqualmie Pass and that stuff already.
Oh yeah,
It's already happening now. Which is crazy because I remember a few years ago I had to go to Union Gap to do some work, and this was taking place in December. So, you'd think getting close to winter time and everything. No, the pass was clear. It was sunny. It was like dry. Everything was fine. Yeah, this year apparently. Well, it's 2020, so or maybe it's that whole La Nina thing. I think that's going on too. But
yeah,
God, it's snow. Yeah,
but
Jesus.
Yeah. So anyway, I spend the night in Big Timber, and I spent the whole evening plotting a new course. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna take this Highway 89 here, and I'm gonna go down into Idaho and go all the way down to southern Idaho where it's probably not snowing, hopefully, and maybe there's not as many mountains or whatever, and then I'll just come right back up, and it'll add 2 days and another 900 miles, but whatever,
At least you don't die,
right?
right?
I wanted to be safe. I did not want to die, so I woke up the next morning and I looked at all the weather and stuff, and I-90 looked less windy, but it was still super icy, and I was like, well, I don't really want to take I-90 at all, even though it was only like 9 miles. I was like, that was just too much. So I wanted to take like the frontage road that goes along I-90, and it's still a highway and stuff, but there's like nobody on it, so I could go as slow as I wanted to. So I start off at like 8:30 in the morning, and I'm going along this frontage highway, and everything's going just fine. I'm like taking it slow and even keel and all that, and then it starts to wind a little bit, and the houses are becoming more and more sparse. And then it becomes like a dirt driveway, basically. And
oh God!
And there's like the occasional snowdrift, so I like speed up and then just like let off the gas and let inertia carry me through these snowdrifts, and that worked fine. And then it gets windier and windier and turns into like this 1-lane gravel road. So there's like spiky rocks sticking up out of the snow and ice, and a bunch of these snowdrifts, like more and more of them. It was like an episode, or not an episode, but like it was like a level of Super Mario where it just like progressively gets worse and worse. Or whatever.
Oh my God!
So I get way out, and I'm driving around, and I'm looking around, and I see like razor wire fences and stuff. So I know like people come out there eventually at some point, but there's nothing. Nothing anywhere, like for miles, and I can't see anything. And then I look ahead on the road, and here's a really long snowdrift, and I was like, oh crap. So I like speed up, and I'm coasting through it. I'm like, come on. I put it in second, and I'm like spinning the wheels, trying to get a little extra juice out of it, and it just slows to a stop about 3/4 of the way through this snowdrift, and I high centered in the snow.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna die.
Hope you got some MREs and like a couple of tea lights or something.
I mean, I wasn't really super worried about dying. I had like half a tank of gas, so I could keep the heat on. I had my cat with me too, so I was like, I'm not hiking away from my cat or trying to take my cat with me, so I have to figure a way out of this, right?
Well, and you probably don't have any cell signal in this area.
Well, I lucked out, and I did.
Oh, really?
But before I wanted to call roadside assistance, because I was like, how long is that going to take way out here?
Oh, God.
I grabbed a crowbar out of my trunk and started trying to like chip away the ice and the snow. And then I looked ahead, and there was a giant hill completely covered in snow right ahead of me. And there's no way in hell I would be able to turn around because there's like snow banks on either side, and it's a 1-lane road.
Oh my God.
So I was like, well, that's useless. So I call my insurance and I get the roadside assistance, and they're like, yeah, you should have someone there in an hour, and probably took more like an hour and a half to 2 hours, but that's only because the truck they sent almost got stuck a few times.
So the rescuer needed rescuing at that point.
Almost.
Oh my god.
So I mean, I had envisioned that they were going to send like a flatbed truck to just put my car on top of it and carry me the 6 miles out to the highway.
No, this is one of those hook ones, right?
Yeah, it was
It's
a winch on like a F-250 or something.
Oh god.
And I was like, oh jeez. So he hooks up to like one wheel of my car and then tries winching me, and of course the car goes like,
oh geez.
and I'm like, you're just getting me stuck more.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I wish we had video of that. Like, you should have been recording that.
I thought about making a video like a kitchen sink university on survival, but then I was like, it would be kind of, I don't know, anticlimactic if I'm just like, hey Geico, can you send out roadside assistance?
Or if it was like, yeah, well, this is Casey's video about how to survive in the winter, but he died, and we recovered it from his cold dead hands.
Like
you
the
know,
Blair Witch
frozen
Project.
body or something, and he's like, so cold.
I mean, like, long story short, he gets me out like by winching me inch by inch up this hill.
Oh my god.
And the rest of it from there wasn't so bad. Like, originally he wanted to try to turn me around because he said it's like way worse going ahead. But we just went for it. You know, I was like, you know what? Like, as long as you're just right in front of me and you can winch me out of a tight spot, like I think I'll go for it. And that worked. So
at this point, like, where were you in the east to west I-90?
somewhere between Big Timber and Livingston, Montana.
Okay, so you're still in Montana.
Middle south of Montana.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I was just like 20 minutes into my trip.
Oh, the winters are crazy there.
Yeah. So it's already like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's gonna be like dark in 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, that's gonna push me back a little further, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to go the way I wanted to, and found that the road was closed at Wyoming. And I was like, well, I can't go that way, so I had to take I-90 anyway.
Oh my god. Jesus.
So, like, I could have just taken I-90, sucked it up and taken I-90 and cut a day off my trip. But, yeah. So, I mean, the rest of it, there was, I don't know, like 900 mountains I had to go over. And they were all snowy and icy and windy, but nothing quite as bad as I-90 in Montana. And then, like, my last day, I was coming from Spokane to Tacoma, and it was all smooth sailing. Snoqualmie Pass was actually pretty dry, and I'm coming down the hill from the pass, and I got a phone call that my mom tested positive for COVID.
Oh, jeez.
While she's in the rest home with stage 4 cancer.
Oh, God. Oh.
Yeah. So like that whole trip was just screwy, but what the thing that I was thinking about most on that trip, because it was so much like middle America and middle of nowhere, and like I got stuck where there's like nobody for miles.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why do we have such sprawl? Like, we don't need that anymore. Like, where I got stuck, it wasn't like there were crops everywhere or animals grazing. It was just a bunch of dead space.
Well, but here's the thing. Think about what you landed in. Like, what could you do with that space apart from harvest snow? Right? Like, I mean...
But I mean, in this connected world that we have now, there's really no reason to have, like, these dense urban centers where it's like, oh, you have to go live in Seattle to get a good job.
Oh, I agree. And especially, in fact, the whole COVID thing really illustrates that you could pretty much live anywhere. And actually, I just got an email that Starlink is available now for testing. The whole Elon Musk's satellite internet thing. So
Okay.
basically, you can have like internet anywhere.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a good point. Like you could live out in Montana in a cabin and have a generator or something or whatever, and still work your day job, your tech job or something like that. And you could buy a piece of property for a paycheck essentially, and
Yeah.
like property taxes are low. Like yeah, we should be spreading out a lot there because yeah, it's the thing. It's like if you look at population density, there's actually a lot of room on the planet. It's just everybody, for some fucking reason, wants to live like sardines on top of other people. You know, they
Yeah.
gotta be like, I mean, it's like my house, my neighbor. I could like spit and hit their house. Like, why? Why does it have to be so damn close? You know,
Yeah.
I don't get it.
And I get that there's like, two kinds of people. There's city people and country people, and it's not like it has to be, everybody's like tightly packed across the entire world or anything, or miles and miles apart. But like some kind of happy medium where
Yeah.
there's not really any risk of you like being stuck too far away from people. I mean, yes, leave forests and wetlands and stuff alone because animals live there, right?
Well, and we do need like
Yeah.
spaces in nature
Yeah.
to preserve
and
for the
and,
future.
and wide vast spaces for crops and stuff, yes, but these like random like vast swaths of empty land that are just useless. I mean, like literally useless because they're covered in grass, right? Which is like, for as far as photosynthesis goes, is kind of like a net zero.
Yeah.
Like you get nothing out of grass; it just wastes space. And
Well,
it takes all the groundwater and just wastes it. Like it's no good.
Well, and especially if you don't have like animals or cows or goats or whatever you're raising there, you don't have any of that stuff. You just have 400 acres of grasslands. It
Yeah.
makes no sense.
Yeah, like while I was stuck, one guy actually drove up behind me trying to get around, and I was like, "Do you live out here?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I almost wanted to be like, "Why?"
Yeah. Well, I know why, and it's to get away from it all. Probably because the thing is, like, some people who live there, they may have grown up there, but some people go to those places because they used to live in these dense urban centers, and they're just tired of people, tired of the rat race and all the noise and just distraction and stuff, and you just want like to be alone and have peace. The who's that writer? Was it Golden Pond? I think. Who's the guy that did that?
I don't know.
Too much beer. But I'll remember it afterwards, I'm sure, as usual. But sometimes it's important to kind of like reset yourself and go back to that and have a little bit of elbow room.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly the reason I bought a boat. Like, that's what I want, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
but I mean, you could still do that and have like more people living in those areas.
Yeah.
Like you could even still have it to where you can't even see your neighbor, but you're still within like a feasible walking distance to get help if you need it. There's just enough like society nearby so you don't have to like drive a mile, or not a mile, but like an hour just to get food or something. Like
A mile could be an hour
mile
in the
could be an
snow,
hour.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just look at Seattle.
Yeah, yeah. So it just strikes me as odd that we're still clinging to this dense urban center and like vast nothingness, and there's like nothing in between almost.
I think it's kind of like a matter of tradition, and it's also a matter of fear. People don't want to get outside their comfort zone. They think like, oh, if I live in a log cabin or something, or if I live out there in the sticks or something, like it's going to be like a harsh existence, and it's so comfortable in the city living in my cushy apartment or something. I have all the things I need, and maybe that's half the problem. Because yeah, you're right. There is tons of space. There's more space than not space. If you look at just the U.S., let alone Russia. Go to Russia, it's like there's enough forest land there that you could basically put on a backpack and head off into the woods and disappear for the rest of your life, and no one would ever know. They'd never find you.
Yeah.
And my cat is apparently very intrigued by your jacket.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll become a thing, I'm sure. But it's a thing. It's like,
I mean, there's so many problems with packing everyone in like sardines. Like you mentioned, COVID will spread really fast.
or something else, right?
Or
maybe
anything, yeah.
something really bad.
Yeah, I mean, illness in general. Like the great thing about 2020, like wearing masks all the time. I haven't been sick once this year.
Yeah,
Like
I know that's the
I
thing.
love
It's like the flu. If you look at the data for the flu, it's
Yeah.
like whoop, like
Yeah.
it dropped off the charts now.
Like we need to just do this all the time. Like not invade people's bubbles and stuff. I think that's great.
I think I think it's legit, and also it made people a lot more aware about being cautious. Like, hey, if you're sick, don't get other people sick, and don't go to work. Like,
Yeah.
cover your face. Wash
Well,
your hands. Things
That's
like
the other thing I noticed, though, driving across the country, is that the entire state of South Dakota does not give a fuck about anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
There are no masks, and in fact, I saw signs saying that there are no masks allowed. Like, who are you harming? If I want to, if I wanted to wear a mask, who's it bothering?
Well, yeah. Whether it shouldn't be a state thing anyway.
No.
Whether you mandate it or restrict it, like it's up to the individual to decide. Like it's up to the people to say, hey, I want to be safe, or we want to be safe, or something like that. Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, that's an anomaly. Like by and large, I think most places have learned something from this experience. I would hope.
I mean, just in the last 4 months, I've seen like 3 times the amount of the country that I've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And like I went south before and I went north this time, and I've seen quite a lot of the country. Granted, in very small pockets, of course, but I notice a lot of trends state to state as far as how people react to COVID, and by and large, it's very flippant. There's not a lot of people that really care about it, and to some degree, in those smaller areas, not to downplay the seriousness of the virus, but without that tightly packed population, the spread will be lower.
Yeah, well, because they're like, my nearest neighbor is like 7 miles away.
Right.
And I don't even do anything. I
Yeah.
just work on my ranch or something. So I can see how people, especially because at that point, also, in cities and stuff, you're more likely to see evidence of things. And in those areas where you have less likelihood of any kind of occurrence, the evidence is going to be it's going to be very unlikely. So people are going to be like, it's not really a thing. Because I haven't seen it. My 5 friends that I talk to, no one's gotten sick.
Yeah.
And maybe they're right, like in their own little bubble, I guess. But so yeah.
I mean, like people would point to Sweden because they were very laissez-faire about it.
Mm-hmm.
But most of Sweden is empty.
Yeah.
Like totally empty.
Yeah, exactly.
And that like Stockholm and Göteborg and places like that were actually like kind of hot spots, as you would expect.
Yeah. Well, especially early on. I mean, everything was crazy early on. But anyway, oh hi Floyd.
Well, the other thing about the whole sardine thing is the traffic, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and speaking of that, like environmentally,
Yeah.
the fact that you have so many people commuting, and you have these dense areas and it's natural supply and demand, right? Like places like Seattle, it's essentially kind of an island, and there's a lot of restriction on building and things like that. So there's limited places to live,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of places to work. So everybody wants to go there, but nobody can live there. So everybody commutes.
Yeah.
And well, it chokes the freeways. Rush hour going into Seattle is like probably the worst traffic I've seen anywhere. It is so crazy, and
Oh, yeah.
and it's not rush hour. It's like the whole day is a rush hour there.
Pretty much, yeah. It's not as bad as L.A.
No, but that's a factor. Like,
Or I mean, LA's not as bad as Seattle is what I meant to say.
oh, okay, yeah, yeah, true.
Yeah.
Well, they have a different structure there as far as like the road design and stuff. But yeah, like the thing is, from an environmental standpoint, it doesn't really make sense to have everybody coming in, like converging on one area through these choke points and sitting, idling, burning fuel for hours,
Yeah.
hours both directions, just to get to work and back. And that's one of the positive takeaways from 2020 is like, hey, you probably don't even have to commute. Like maybe if you work at Dick's or something or McDonald's or whatever, yeah, you have to actually go there. But then again, who's coming to your restaurant? Like no one's working there anymore. So
Yeah.
delivery, right? It's a changing thing, and I honestly think when the dust settles, it'll be a positive change if people take the right, if they see things the right way, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
take the right cues from this year.
What we need to have happen is for these big corporations that have like endless amounts of money, right? To just say, hey, you know what? We're just going to spread out our locations a little more. Like let's build an Amazon warehouse in Big Timber, Montana. And
Yeah.
you know what? Like not that many people will have to work there because a lot of them can work from home, but the people that do might move to Big Timber and like make the local economy flourish. And
Sure, spread it around a little bit.
and they can still get a house that like they can't see any neighbors or whatever, and they can enjoy that and work at a big firm like Amazon. And
Oh, sure, and you might be able to buy like 10 acres with a nice house on it
yeah,
for like $50,000 there.
Yeah.
Like a really nice place that in Seattle would cost you millions.
oh yeah, and you might have the same amount of cars on the road, but now they're not sitting there idling all day. They're just bzz, bzz, bzz,
Well,
going
yeah,
to and
because
from. And
they're not going to exactly the same place.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point. And businesses are certainly very aware of that. And in fact, a lot of this year has yielded some data that suggests that actually people working from home, they're more productive.
oh yeah,
So depending on what you do, obviously if you work in a warehouse and you drive a forklift, you can't work from home. But if you crunch numbers, look at spreadsheets or whatever, you have like meetings, yeah, you can totally do that from home all day long, and people are more productive, they're happier, they're spending less, and at that point, the cool thing is you don't need these giant office buildings, you don't need like all kinds of cube farms and all this stuff. You might need like 6 people working at your location, and that's it. So you could downsize and save a lot of money,
oh yeah,
which every business wants to do that.
Yeah.
Like if you could cut costs, that's number one on your list.
yeah,
And still have the same staff. That's what's so cool about it. And I think that this year has been a very big eye opener for a lot of businesses and a lot of people in general. Like people realize, I mean, like where I work, we essentially have a skeleton crew. What I do, I can't do from home because it requires like replacing hardware and things like that. But a lot of people work from home, and they've been doing it for, what is it? We're like over 8 months or something now. And it's been perfectly fine. Like,
Yeah.
there's honestly no difference other than the fact that I don't see people in the hallways. And that's fine. I'm a little bit of a introvert, so if the hallways are darkened and there's nobody there, I'm like, hey, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to a lot of businesses, especially like the corporate kind of like headquarters sort of places where there's a lot of people that constitutes like the bulk of traffic. All these commuters going into places, and it sucks because a lot of that mentality, the desire to have people at work, comes from that whole like butts in seats kind of philosophy. Like,
Yeah.
well, you can't work from home. You have to be sitting in a chair in the cubicle looking at your screen. Otherwise, you're not doing work because I can't see you. So I don't know what you're doing. You could be like masturbating or something. Like, but so what? As long as you get the work done, right?
Well, yeah.
It's a like results based kind of thing as opposed to like whatever you're doing from moment to moment.
Right. Yeah. I think the thing that people don't really realize about working from home is that you have so much less distraction. You're able to get more done in less amount of time.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you want to take a nap or if you want to masturbate, so what? Like you get the job done.
The thing is, like, you don't have to commute.
Yeah.
So you've especially like if I lived in Tacoma and worked in Seattle, I would burn 4 hours a day just driving to work and back.
Yeah.
And it would burn me out. Like, I would be so sick of it. But cutting that out, it's like, hey, I feel happy and I want to do stuff. And in fact, that's been the result of analysis, is like people actually work longer hours willingly.
Yeah.
Like, you might be on salary or something, and it's like normally you would like come into work exactly at your normal start time. At the second that the clock ticks to 5 o'clock or whatever, you're out.
Yeah.
And now people are like, you know what? I'll just keep working. I just want to get this thing done.
Yeah.
And it's such a crazy paradigm shift, and that's a good thing. Like, for all the negativity of 2020, I think this is a really good necessary change, and it took this for people to realize it.
Yeah. Like, the people should basically strong arm the employers and be like, look, if you're not going to let us work at home, you should be paying us for our commute too.
Yeah.
And some places do that, but very few.
Yeah.
Very, very few.
Oh yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, employers now are starting to realize the benefits of that. Like, they're encouraging it. And I think long after all this has passed, right? Let's say tomorrow the whole COVID thing is all done, right? I don't think people are going to be wanting people to come back to work. They're going to be like, you know what? That actually, everything was better the way it was for the most part. Like, you don't need to house all of these people. You don't have to provide for them or anything, because they're just sitting at home doing their thing. And the roads are clear. Well, not around here they're not. But
a little more clear than the.
That's true. We're a bit of an anomaly. Fuck Seattle. That's all I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the world over, there's benefits that will be far-reaching. Like, we'll realize them. We'll still be doing the same thing years later.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sucks that it's like we have to be kind of like pushed into that realization when it was only obvious. Like, literally, if you sat down and thought about it, it makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah.
Like, just study it, science. Like, look at the data, look at the information, like, analyze it, and it's only obvious that's the way to do it. But the only thing holding people back is managers wanting to control people, the butts on seats thing, that like, I want to see your face. If there's time to lean, there's time to clean. Like, fuck that. We're done with that. It's a thing of the past now.
Yeah.
Unless you work in an industry where you can't do that. But even those, like, have changed in all kinds of different ways that I think are positive.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had 2 employers during this pandemic now, and both of the managers were kind of like, okay, every so often during a meeting they'd be like, just want to remind you that even though you're working from home, you're still working. It's like, shut up.
Well, obviously,
Like,
you know.
you're basically just trying to like passive aggressively say you don't think we're doing any work.
Well, and this is actually a really interesting tangent, because that's a good point. That like a lot of people think that it's really important to manipulate, like to control the work you're doing by the minute, right? Like it's all about how much time you're spending. When in reality, if you look at it like objectively, there are tasks to be completed, and you have to complete those tasks. If you complete them, you've done your work. It doesn't matter if you were like jacking off for 3/4 of that hour, but as long as that quarter of the hour you did an hour's worth of work, like that, it's the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's certain professions or whatever, or certain positions that might be time sensitive or whatever, like performing a surgery or,
yeah,
like in my field, it's mostly laid back, but if we had experiments or whatever that we had to do time points on or whatever, well, yeah, we got to be like on the dot for that
Sure.
stuff, and those things happen, but you have to like understand that those are like outliers, and most things in most jobs can basically be done when they're done,
Well, yeah, and the whole 9 to 5 thing, that's another thing to consider. Like,
Oh, I hate that.
whatever you're doing, I think about local businesses like Boeing, right? They're making planes. There's a bunch of engineers and machinists and people that work with tools and hardware and things like that. But it doesn't matter when you start and stop. You're essentially working to complete a project, and the time that you begin and end is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. The amount of work that you do on it is the factor. So, you could have people working at night. You could have people working early in the morning, like whenever. Honestly, as long as here's what we want to do, we take this plan and turn it into a plane. That's your sole task, and we want it by this date, right? It doesn't matter how many hours you're putting into it. It matters that there's an order from a customer that says we want like 10 planes, 10 737 Maxes or whatever, and they've got to be done by this time. So it doesn't matter if you spend 24/7 for like a week working on a plane, or if you spread that out over like a month. In fact, it's probably better. Well, no, okay. There's the whole like sleep thing. But the thing that the point is like it isn't something that like starts and stops day to day and should be cyclical in that kind of sense, because it really doesn't even make any sense. Honestly, like if you want to come into work and work like 12 hours and then like not come in the next day and then come in and work like 16 hours or something, as long as at the end of that time period, the goal, the target, you complete that task, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
it really doesn't matter.
Well, and the whole commerce thing, like, I all throughout the years that I've been working, I've noticed that if you have to do something, if you have to go to the bank or see the doctor, it has to be during the exact window that you need to be at work.
Yeah. That drives me up the wall.
Yeah, and it's like, well, you could have so much more like market diversity and like a flourishing economy if the whole world was just operating around the clock.
Yeah, and whenever.
Yeah.
Maui time, right?
People that work swing, people that work graveyard, they're disadvantaged because they have to like forego sleep to do the things they need to do. We have to take time off of work.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like if things just shifted, and, like, hey, we only want to be open 10 hours a day, but let's make it from like noon until, like whatever,
Yeah.
if people just did that, that would also alleviate traffic. That would create more jobs.
Sure.
That would improve, you know, the economy like hand over fist.
Oh, and the internet has fixed a lot of those issues too. Like, you can coordinate all this stuff using the internet, like in ways we never could before. Like, you don't necessarily have to have store hours. You can make appointments, like with calendars and stuff online, and
Yeah.
come in whenever there's demand. Like, people make appointments for these times, and that's when you show up to do your thing or something,
Yeah.
right?
Or if you have demand all over the place and you still only want to work like 8 hours a day, you could roll it. Like Monday, I'm open at 8 to 4, and then Tuesday 9 to 5, and then Wednesday 10 to 6, and
Oh, that's a really interesting idea. Yeah.
you just play with it.
Yeah.
People are so like focused on one thing. They don't want to think outside the box at all.
Yeah, like structure for the sake of structure, right? Like, why do we have this whole 9 to 5, which isn't even 9 to 5 because we don't have hour-long lunches like we used to anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's like half hour. Well, it depends on the industry you work in. And people used to get paid lunches, by the way. That's how 9 to 5 happened. And now it's like 8 plus 1 hour days, basically. Yeah. But that's a whole other topic. But it's an interesting thing that the cool thing I think about all of this is it kind of forced people to get creative to survive, and it yielded some really interesting results. And I'm hoping that when all this ends, that people don't just kind of like, oh, okay, we can go back to normal, and well, let's just go back to the time when everybody had to punch a clock and come in at 9, and that kind of thing. Like, I'm hoping this is an eye opener, because the thing is, like, if you run a business, it's actually advantageous as a business owner to not go back to normal, because you could save a shit ton of money by doing things the way we're doing it now. Like all this overhead of office space and stuff like that, and all the electricity and all the computers and all this stuff. No, fuck it. Let everybody stay at home if they can. If you have to have people come in, if you need forklift drivers and truck drivers and burger flippers and stuff, obviously they got to come in. But there's opportunities for delivery too in a lot of those situations. New things that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
Like, imagine, in 2019, if like you said, oh, I'm gonna, start work at doing DoorDash or something like that, or any of the, delivery services. People think you're crazy, but now it's like it's a career.
Yeah.
Like, it's legit. Like, there's serious demand for that, and I think people are gonna realize how convenient that is. Like, at first it seems an inconvenience, but then you're like, hey, wait, I could just like grab my phone, tap a few things, and bam, I got burgers.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Or the job itself is like you make your own hours. Like
Yeah.
I did it for a little while and it was great. It was like, you know what, I'm not doing anything at the moment. I think I'll just go to work.
Yeah.
And like work a few hours and make some money and listen to music while I'm doing it. Like,
Feels so 2003, like
Yeah.
back when we were roommates. Like, yeah. Oh man.
yeah, I really think this is going to be a turning point in our species, where we kind of start to realize that we don't have to make work our lives.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's something that it's important because how do I put it? Like, we've become so conditioned to believe that we have to do things a certain way because it made sense a long time ago. Just like DST, right?
Mm-hmm.
Long time ago, with like oil lanterns and gas lanterns and stuff like that, DST made sense. But now with LED lights, it doesn't make any sense anymore. Like, why are we doing it? Reasons, and it's the same kind of thing. Like, a long, long time ago, we didn't have all the technology and all the capabilities we have now. And so the way that we did things made sense. But hundreds of years went by, and we still did things the same way, when it was only obvious that there were opportunities to do it a different way. But people didn't want to change, because change is hard and scary. And, they just like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. What would happen if we let everybody stay home and work? Like, oh, it'll be pandemonium. And actually, this illustrates that it really isn't. Like, it actually works pretty well. And I think that's important. Like, maybe it's important for people in other sectors and realms and stuff. Hey, do some experimentation. Like, try something wild and revolutionary from time to time. It might actually be a benefit.
Yeah.
Like, you might end up saving a lot of money and making a lot of money, and everybody's going to be happy, and life is going to be good. So, yeah.
So that's something I've been wanting to talk about on the show for a while, is the whole, like, urban versus, like, I don't know, what's the opposite of urban?
Rural?
Rural, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why can't it just be, like, kind of homogenous, like, about the same population anywhere you go, so it's like you're not completely isolated. If you want to be social, you can go into the town square and be social at dinner time or whatever, and if you want to be alone, you just go home and there's no one in sight, and it's just like that happy medium between middle of nowhere and packed like sardines.
Yeah, and it's been, this is the stupid thing, all that's been possible for decades, but people have been a little hesitant to accept it for whatever reason. It's like, I remember those AT&T commercials, the You Will commercials, have you ever read a book from 1,000 miles away? You will, and the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T. Like, send effects from the beach, that kind of thing. Like, we've been there since the 90s, and only now, in 2020, are we finally realizing, oh yeah, this works. But yeah, distribution, like people spreading out and stuff, is totally possible. And I'm hoping this is the big takeaway from 2020, is like, you know what, we were idiots. Like, why haven't we been doing this all along?
I passed through a small town that I can't remember the name of the town, but it said population 74. And there were 2 restaurants, and one of them was boarded up. And I was thinking, like, how do you have a town of 74 people and your restaurant is boarded up? Like,
oh yeah. But the thing is, like, what you're talking about, you'd bring people into that area, and they would demand restaurants, and that restaurant, they'd pull the boards off and create a new one.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's just it. There's not enough people to support more than one restaurant, basically.
Yeah, because we're still stuck in the mentality that you have to be near work, because you have to come to work and sit in your little cubicle and answer the phone and on your computer and stuff. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, and meanwhile, if you live in that town of 74 people and you want Indian food, you probably got to drive 200 or 300 miles. You're not door dashing that either.
Yeah, well, you could, but it'll cost you.
That's $4, $4.
$500 million, $4. Was that a Burger King commercial, I think?
$4, that was like Godfathers of Pizza Hut or something.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was Pizza Hut. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Commerce would basically, like, the demand would follow the people effectively.
Well, and that's the cool thing, is more people would move out into rural areas.
More people would start businesses.
Well, yeah, and because there's more people, so they need things, right? So they would do that. But you get more people moving to rural areas, less people in the cities become cheaper, all the homelessness goes away, because now all of a sudden everything's cheap, because there's nobody there.
Yeah.
So it's like this high-rise apartment complex and stuff. It's like, oh, it has like 15% occupancy, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're going to be like paying you to live there.
Yeah.
Um,
That's literally the only way to make trickle down economics work, is to actually like let it trickle out. You know?
well, yeah, exactly. Like I think that's the thing is like, it's all us. It's all our minds. It's in our heads. It's like that whole mentality, like, oh, I have to live in the city, and I got to drive to work, and I got to sit there. I got to punch a clock. You know, like maybe you do. Sometimes there are definitely places where you have to do that, but you don't necessarily have to do it on the button. And that's something that really bothers me, and that like the every second counts kind of mentality. Like you know, oh, you were a minute late. Like, well, so, like what happened? Did the Earth explode or something like that? You know, I'm here. Oh, you want me to work an extra minute? I guess if minutes really are that your thing, and yeah, like. There are definitely situations that are time sensitive, like you said, places where you make appointments, because people expect you to meet those appointments. If you say a certain
Right.
time, like,
Yeah,
hey,
they
you're gonna
depend
be,
on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna you show up at this time, and I will service you, or I will service you when I get to you at this time.
Giggity.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But you know, yeah, the thing is, like, all you have to do is look to places like Comcast to realize that's bullshit. They'll give you a window of like 6 hours, and they'll show up at like the 11th hour. They'll be like, you know, oh well, it's anytime between like 11 a.m. and like maybe 5 p.m. and then like 4:59 p.m. they're like knocking at your door, like.
Yeah.
So I took the whole day off of work just for you to show up and do like 15 minutes worth of work.
Exactly. So, like, yeah, places like that should be 24-hour operations.
Mhm.
You know, like,
Yeah, because there are actually, like, not everybody wants to work late, but some people do. Because there's actually advantages to that, because your off time is during the time when everybody else is like at work, and so you could go to the store and there's nobody there. There's actually advantages to working nights, and some people dig it.
Yeah.
Some people don't, but leave it open. The whole like everybody starts at this time, so let's all rush. Oh, let's all cram to work and stuff and get in fucking accidents because like every second counts. And I'll just like throw my vape like, yeah, it was actually like pretty good. But everybody's like rushing to get to work and everything. They're rushing to get home, you know, and they're fighting each other, yelling at each other, like honking horns and stuff. Why? Why do we need to do that?
Yeah.
Like, what does it matter? Just take it easy, you know. Like, we'll all get there in the end. Like, I don't know. This is actually like, well, this is probably a pretty good point to end on, but
Yeah.
damn, that was good. It started off as like a story about traveling east to west, and then turned into businesses and
I had a lot of time to think.
yeah.
And that was basically like the prevailing thing that I noticed, was that there was just a whole lot of nothing, and there's a shit ton of people in just a few places, and that's
Yeah.
dumb.
Yeah, and you know, thinking about it like years ago when I was thinking about like buying land and making a homestead and everything, I looked around, and interesting thing, Nevada, you could buy like 40 acres for like $2,500 but on eBay, right? Like, you just like, oh, there it is. I've got 40 acres. You know, like 40 fucking acres. That is enough. That is a huge amount of space.
Yeah.
And there are people, homeless people and stuff, like all over the place. Like, why isn't everybody clamoring for that? Well, because there's nothing out there. There's no prospects and stuff. But now there is, honestly.
Yeah.
You could have internet in the middle of nowhere and run a business. You could work for somebody
Yeah.
in the middle of the Nevada desert. And I think that is a
very, very necessary step. And
Yeah.
it's a little too late, but better late than never, honestly.
Yeah. So everyone should just take this COVID-19 idea of spreading out and just really overdo it. You know,
Yeah.
like, actually spread out. Like,
Oh, sure. I agree. Like that's a really good philosophy. It's a great idea. Oh man. Yeah.
yeah.
And you know, don't be too down on this year. Like it was okay, there were ups and downs, but you know, we learned a lot. Like I didn't learn anything, but you guys learned things. That
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, we've lost some cool people like Van Halen and Alex Trebek and Sean Connery. It's not quite as bad as 2016, where it was like every day some celebrity was dying.
yeah.
But, you know, like there's been a lot of crap happening this year.
But there's always crap. But the
Yeah.
thing is, like, this is unprecedented as far as like people opening their eyes to like different ways of doing things.
Yeah, like it's overall good, right?
Mhm.
Because people are finally getting challenged.
Yeah.
Everyone's had to move out of their comfort zones. It's like, yeah, I don't necessarily feel that comfortable wearing a mask. I don't like not being able to go sit in a movie theater or sit at any restaurant that I want to. But you know what? Like life goes on. It's not the end of the world. you know?
And the thing is, like, what's important in my view, like, however you feel about this particular situation and its risk, it has taught us things, important things, and you know, like as far as just general day-to-day avoiding getting sick and preventing other people from getting sick. Like when the next flu season comes around, like we'll actually probably come out with a lot less deaths than normal, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just like general hygiene and safety practices. And the other thing that I think about is, as a prepper, is this is a practice run, right? Like, this could be a lot worse than it is. But we've had an opportunity to do like a less dangerous dry run of that situation. So when the real shit hits the fan, like when we actually get like a, you know, Ebola plague or, you know, Spanish flu or something like that, we're going to be ready. We're like, oh yeah, we know what to do.
Yeah.
We've been there, done that. Like, oh yeah, okay, we just do all these things and do what we did in 2020, and okay, we'll weather the storm. And I think that's a good thing. So, you know, if you're one of those people that's resenting all of that, like, look at it that way. Think about it like a prepper.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how I think about it. Like,
By the way, you would have been proud of me when I was stuck in the snow. I was like, okay, I've got food, water, enough fuel for some heat for a while. I've got space blankets and an actual blanket if that fails. You know, like, so I had stuff.
You were ready, yeah.
I was good, you know.
Nice. I mean, that's better than like having like a pack of Twizzlers and, you know, a small Bic lighter, you know, one of the
Two
mini
zip ties.
two zip ties and a dirty roller and a rag or something.
Sandpaper.
Yeah, sandpaper. Inside joke. Yeah. Oh, this is actually a really good conversation. I think probably a good point. Yeah, we actually like talked about it like about an hour.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So you know, to everybody out there, thanks for deep sink diving with us into traveling across the snowy tundra and getting stuck and getting towed to transferring populations from densely populated areas to sparsely populated areas and everything else.
The economy,
traffic,
and the environment,
work life, and geez, God, like, wow, we touched on Quite a lot of stuff, actually.
Yeah.
That's good. As usual, as we're inclined to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Hey, raise a glass for 2020. Hope you learned something.
Yeah. Let's go write a song about this.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, have a good night, everybody.